EGR 6163, Project Management, Module 4, Lecture 2, Defining the Project. So continuing on from Lecture 2, we're going to talk about what's known as the process breakdown structure. We're also going to talk about how to create responsibility matrices for small projects and how to create a communication plan for a project. And again, the reading assignment is Larson, Chapter 4. So while the work breakdown structure is best suited for design and build projects that have tangible outcomes, such as an offshore mining facility or a new car prototype, those projects can be decomposed or broken down into majors, deliverables, sub-deliverables, etc., and ultimately work packages. It's more difficult to apply the work breakdown structure to less tangible, what's called process-oriented projects, in which the final outcome is a product of a series of steps or phases. In this case, we use what's called a process breakdown structure that's often used. So this is used for process-oriented projects like software. It's often referred to as the waterfall method in the software industry. So what is a process-oriented project? It's a project that the final outcome is a series of steps or phases. It is a project that evolves over time, with each phase affecting the next phase. It's a project that is driven by performance requirements, not by plans or blueprints. So this figure below shows an example of a process breakdown structure for a software development of a project. So instead of being organized around deliverables, the project is organized around phases. So you have level 1 phase, level 2 phase, level 3 phase, and you have the outputs. So each of these major 5 phases can be broken down into more specific activities until a sufficient level of detail is achieved to communicate exactly what needs to be done to complete that phase. People can be assigned to very specific activities, and a organization breakdown structure can be created just as it was done in the work breakdown structure example. So here these deliverables aren't ignored, but they're defined as outputs required to move to the next phase. So instead of being sometimes they're referred to as deliverables, but more often not, they're referred to as what's called outputs. So here, for example, you see the software product development project, it'd be whatever the name was called. You see the level major phases: analysis, design, construct, test, and roll out. And from each one of those, you see, for example, design is broken out into level 2 activities, and then certain ones of those are broken out, like this one, develop technical design, is broken out into further level 3 activities. And you can see the deliverables or the outputs are defined here. So in many cases, the size and scope of the projects do not warrant an elaborate work breakdown structure or organizational breakdown structure. So one tool that's widely used by project managers and task force leaders on small projects is what's called the responsibility matrix, abbreviated REM. This is often called a linear responsibility chart, and it summarizes the tasks to be accomplished and who is responsible for what on a project. So here's some of the things that the book talks about. It provides a means for all participants in a project to view their responsibilities and see what their assignments are. Clarifies the extent or type of authority exercised by each participant. So here's an example of a responsibility matrix for a market research project. You can see the project team members: Richard, Dan, Dave, Linda, and Elizabeth. And you can see, what they're responsible for. R means you're responsible. So for identify target customer, that's Richard, and he's going to be supported by Dan and Linda, for example. And you can see how this is broken out for each individual. So the figure below so it's a different example. This is the responsibility matrix for a conveyor belt project. This is for, a larger kind of project where you have the design team, the development team, the documentation team, and you can see what they're responsible for. And this is another way to do it. You can code them in numbers, like one is responsible. So for design, the architectural design, that's this design team here, and hardware design, that's the design team, right? Development is shown here for the hardware specifications, utility specifications. So this is another way to do it. So once we got our work breakdown structure, our process breakdown structure completed, we want to come up with what's known as the communications plan. What does the communication plan address? Well, it addresses, what needs to be collected and when, what information, who will receive the information, what methods will be used to gather and store the information, what are the limits, if any, on who has access to certain kinds of information, when will the information be communicated, how it will be communicated. All those kind of questions have to be answered in the project communication plan. Once the project deliverables and work are clearly identified, the next step is to create an internal communication plan to keep everybody informed within the group working on the project. So developing a communication plan that answers the following questions. First of all, stakeholder analysis. Who are the target groups? Is it the customers, the sponsor, the project team, the project office? Who needs the information? What information do they need? What's the project status reports, deliverables, the scope changes, team meeting status, etc. The next one is the sources of information. Where do we get the information? We have to consider the dissemination modes. How are we going to get the information to the people that need it? Is it going to be hard copy, email? Are we going to have teleconferencing? How are we going to do it? And finally, the responsibility and timing. Who's going to send out that information and when? The book gives a very good example of a stakeholder communication matrix. So when you're trying to figure out exactly, who we should give information to, this is a nice kind of chart. So here, at the bottom of the horizontal axis is, low and high interest. Some stakeholders have more interest in the project than others. And also on the vertical axis is power. So this is like, the low would be very low level, workers, where high would be upper level management. So here you kind of categorize individual stakeholders. So here you have stakeholders listed like A, B, C, D, E, F, and G, and H. You got all these different stakeholders, and so you put them in their respective categories. So here, stakeholder group A has a medium interest, but they're very high powered. So they would fall in this category up here. Keep these guys satisfied. On the other hand, H, these are have very high interest in the project, but they're also very high level upper middle management. So those guys, you want to manage those guys closely and keep them informed about everything. Here B, these guys, they have low interest and they're very low on the totem pole. So you just provide general information to those people. So this is kind of a nice way to because different stakeholders are going to have different levels of interest, and upper level management is different than lower level management. So you got to keep all those this is a nice way to keep those different stakeholders and be able to rank them, kind of keep you out of trouble. So the book is an example of the Shale Oil Research Project Communication Plan. And see, this is a kind of a nice way to do it here. You see at the top you have the, what information that we're putting out, who the target audience is, when we're putting out the information, how we're going to communicate with them, and who's going to actually do the communication. So for example, for major milestones, the target audience for that is senior management and project manager. When are we going to do it? Twice a month, bi-monthly. How are we going to do it? We're going to email them, and we're going to provide a hard copy. Who's going to be responsible? The project office. So this is a very good example of a communication plan that the book gives that is a very nice example.